Good evening, everyone. Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right, let us now turn to page number, let me share the screen. Right. This is page number, let us start with page number 35, please. We finished last time on page number 36, but just to catch up and remind ourselves of what we've gone through last week, let us just read today from Kaya Anapana. All right. Contemplation of the body. Monks. Whenever a monk is breathing in long, he knows I breathe in long. Right? Emphasis on the word he knows. Right, which is expressing a sense of awareness of the motion of the breath. Or when he is breathing out long, he knows I breathe out long. Right? Or when he is breathing in short, he knows I breathe in short. Or when he is breathing out short, he knows I breathe out short. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in experience in the whole body. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the whole body. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in calming the bodily function. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out calming the bodily function. Then monks, exerted, fully aware, mindful, the monk dwells contemplating the body in the body. We went over what the body in the body is several times now, right? I hope it makes sense. Now, this is where we stopped last time. Thank you, Devika, for the reminder, as always. Right. Putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Putting away vinaya. This means that the 5 hindrances have to be abandoned prior to practicing satipatthana. Interesting statement there. Vinaya, this means that the 5 hindrances have to be abandoned prior to practicing satipatthana. This is because the hindrances in the form of mental impurities, chetaso upaklesa, weaken wisdom, panyaya dubali karana. In the Nalaka Pana, Sutta. Okay. The Buddha tells Anuruddha, while a clansman still does not attain to zest and joy that are secluded from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states, or to something more powerful than that, longing and for the other 4 hindrances will invade his mind and remain. I thank Ajahn Brahmavasu for pointing this out. Right? Now, I understand when we read the word abandon here, that it could then be understood as, okay, must we then get rid of the hindrances before the satipatthana? How can we do that? as we already know, we can't do that. Right? It is referring to, today I have a Coca-Cola bottle. It is referring to the state of where the mind is withdrawn from its dependence upon the hindrances, rather than a mind which has abandoned the hindrances. Do you understand what I mean? Right? It is two very different things. Now, for example, if a meditator, due or owing to the nature of ayoniso manasikara, wrong attention, might come to experience an occurrence which could be taken with a sense of negativity, right? Now, through practice and training, that person cultivates yoniso manasikara rather than ayoniso manasikara. Now the mind adapts to a different aspect or way of understanding or overcoming an experience if it should be overcome, rather than the ways that the person first used, which were based upon ayoniso manasikara ways. Do you understand? As we know already, the Satipatthana is what makes Buddhism or the Buddhist practice of meditation special and unique. Special and unique from the other practices which were already available as teachings during the time that the Buddha was a bodhisattva. We had the Rupa Vachara meditations, the Arupa Vachara meditations already being practiced thousands of years before the existence of the Buddha. Right? So this, what then instigated the Bodhisattva to now seek a way of deliverance from this state of mind which continuously clings and attaches itself to things that are impermanent. That was a special ounce of teaching that the Buddha introduced to the world. It was only through those teachings that a person was able to overcome or truly abandon the hindrances. Right? So the word abandon here should not be taken in a way where the person should get rid of the hindrances. No, we get rid of the hindrances through the Satipatthana. That is clear. However, we must draw ourselves away from our dependence upon the hindrances to our daily life. Or in our daily lives. Do you understand? Yeah? All right. Coming back. Covetousness and displeasure for the world. Avijja domanassa. Which Walsh renders as hankering and fretting for the world. Covetousness and displeasure, or longing and loathing. Majjhima Nikaya says that longing and displeasure signify the first two hindrances, sensual desire and ill will. Sensual desire and ill will. Principal hindrances to be overcome for the practice to succeed. Principal hindrances to be overcome for the practice to succeed. They thus represent the contemplation of mind objects. Right? Contemplation of mind objects, which begin with the five hindrances, which begin with the five hindrances. Now, it is very interesting that these two words here, which we know, Kama Chanda and Vyapada, what role or what is the role that Kama Chanda and Vyapada plays in denouncing or taking away the power of this term Vinaya, which we have just gone through earlier? Sensual desire and ill will. Now, when we refer to sensual desire, we know that a person who lives with this hindrance of sensual desire is a person who would act, conduct himself with or closely associating the objects of sensual pleasure and sensual experience of the Kama Vachara Bhumi. Isn't it? To quote the definition of Kama Vachara Bhumi, Kama Avachara Titi Kama Vachara. The person who repeatedly, Avachara, repeatedly dwells himself in the pleasures that are offered by the objects available within the Kama Vachara Bhumi, that plane is called the Kama Vachara Bhumi. Now, sensual desire, as long as sensual desire or this hindrance of sensual desire exists, right? Now, we must understand when we use the word Kama Chanda, we always use the term Kama Chanda to refer to the first of the five hindrances. We could also go into the extreme of things, which now makes our life very difficult, where now we try to segregate ourselves from all the experiences given to us by the sensual sphere, thinking that this is the getting rid of the hindrances. Remember, the Buddha already tried that and it didn't work. When did the Buddha try it? Atta Kilamatana Yoga. The Buddha already tried it for us maybe, and it didn't work. No, I'm sorry, it's for him. He tried it for himself. It didn't work, right? It didn't work. He found that it is in understanding sense as in sensual experiences, and sensual desire as a Kama Chanda. Understanding these two paths gives a person the ability to now live within the Kama Vachara Bhumi without the element of Kama Chanda affecting him and bringing his mind down. This is of great importance. This is of great importance, right? As long as that sensual desire and ill will exist, this denotes a sense of extremism, of clinging, where in one extreme, we cling on to the things that make us happy, and on the other extreme, we cling on to the things that brings us pain and suffering. The things that bring us pain and suffering. Both of these elements shows us a clear state of mind. What is that state of mind? The attachment to that respective plane of existence. Do you understand? Is that clear, everyone? right? And I think that part is really beautiful, personally, right? Where it truly denotes, shows us that to or for a person to go beyond, to mold a life of enlightenment or a life moving towards enlightenment, it is important to first be able to live without going into these extremes of clinging to pain and clinging to pleasure, both of which arises and passes away. Both of which arise and pass away. The Buddha in the Jataka stories and the Dhammapadas teaches us a very effective technique for this, which is repeatedly mentioned, especially in the Jataka stories, when the Buddha goes through, as a bodhisattva, goes through immense pain in his pursuit of enlightenment. And we know how much of pain there is in the Jataka stories as we read them. What does he use to now overcome this pain, or to bring himself the strength that is required to let go of things that brought immense pleasure and happiness and comfort, luxury to his life? There is something far beyond this experience. What is that great enlightenment? Buddhahood. That gave the Buddha the strength, as a bodhisattva, the strength to make those sacrifices at those times in his practice. And that is very much a tool that we could ourselves use in our own practice when we go through the difficulties and challenges of letting go, and the difficulties and challenges of letting go of both pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain. Principal hindrances to be overcome for the practice to succeed. They thus represent the contemplation of mind objects, which begins with the 5 hindrances. Another example, which I think is beautiful, is the example drawn by the Buddha in the Darukandupama Sutra, where the Buddha says, one who cries and laughs with the world. When the world laughs, the person laughs and rejoices. When the world cries, the person cries and brings sadness upon life. He's like, such a person does not attain enlightenment, the Buddha says in the Darukandupama Sutra there. Now, we know with the limitless sort of the Karuna Guna, the Metta Guna, the qualities of the Buddha, that the Buddha was not a selfish person, right? He was speaking of essentially a mind where we could relate and understand the suffering that a person would go through, or understand the happiness, or experience a sense of happiness and profound happiness at that. However, not to be deluded by that experience of happiness and pain. I think that is where that great wisdom applies. It is not in any way to make ourselves so hard that we now become emotionless. No, but in a sense to reinforce our understanding of the world within and outside, so much so that we are able to now not cling on to those experiences, where now that happiness or pain overwhelms our being. See also Mahasatipatthana Sutta and the Satipatthana Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya, Mahasatipatthana Sutra in the Digha Nikaya, and the Satipatthana Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya, on how to deal with the hindrances in one's meditation. The monk affects the abandoning of the hindrances by the contemplation of impermanence, which is exactly what we just discussed. right? In another word, fading away of lust, cessation of suffering, letting go of defilements, and thus comes to look upon the object with equanimity. On Abhijja Domanassa, there is an interesting related passage from the Puppa or Pubbeva Samyutta Sambodha, Pubbeva Sambodha Sutta. Monks, before my awakening, when I was still a bodhisattva, this thought occurred to me: whatever physical and mental joy there is in the world, that is the gratification in the world, asada. Gratification in the world, that is the world, no, that word, that the world. Gratification in the world, that world is impermanent, suffering, and of the nature to change. That is the wretchedness, adhinava, in the world. The removal and abandoning of desire and lust for the world. That is the escape from the world. That is the escape from the world. My knowing here regarding the naming of the first two mental hindrances as Abhijja Domanassa is to show that their elimination, the other hindrances are eliminated too. A view confirmed by Acharya Brahmavamsa. Right? Again, my knowing here regarding the naming of the first two hindrances as Abhijja Domanassa is to show that with their elimination, the other hindrances are eliminated too. A view confirmed by Acharya Brahmavamsa. Right. So here, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world, referring to the world, the experiences of the sensuous, the salayatana experiences, Chakusota Gana Jiva Kaya with the Rupa Ramana, the experiences, putting away, letting go of that covetousness and displeasure that we have towards that world. Towards that world. Right? Dil, your hand is up. You're muted, Dil.
Sorry, you just explained my question because I want to say that Abhijja is covetousness, and you just mentioned the word. I just want to check on that. Yes. And this word wretchedness for adhinava, it's normally had been explained as dangers. Is that okay? Asada had been gratification, and this word adhinava, I've always heard it as dangers. Yeah. Could you? Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Monks. This in and out breathing is one of the bodies, I declare. Monks, this in and out breathing is one of the bodies. What does that mean? Now, a body among bodies, Jnanaponika, one of the bodily processes, this sentence is missing in Thich Nhat Hanh's. Okay. The breath is regarded as the air element among the four elements making up the body. It should also be included in the base of tangibles among bodily phenomena, right? Amongst bodily phenomena. Since the object of attention is touch sensation of the breath entering and exiting through the nostrils. Through the nostrils, right? Now here, what does this essentially then mean, right? Monks, this in and out breath is one of the bodies, I declare. So there we have one of the body, air element, one of the forces. As an experience, when we meditate, usually we enter or we sit down to meditate. If we are to sort of bring our attention, maybe we are not in that position anymore. Maybe we have cultivated and developed ourselves. Maybe we are still there, or maybe we are just sort of starting off. Regardless, when we start off the practice and we sit down and we want to start meditating, right? And you direct your mind to observe the breath. There is this notion, it is not in a way that you're insinuating this, or not in a way that you are using this in any way, but it usually simply just arises, which is, I am meditating. I am observing. I must observe the long breath. I must observe the short breath. What am I doing now? Am I thinking? Right. So as if the meditation is something that you're again doing, and there is a being who is doing it. When the person with experience matures into this understanding, which is the process experience itself is the moment. The process experienced itself is devoid of self. When we start off, meditation is usually difficult when we just start off, isn't it? Right? It's usually very difficult in the beginning. We find it very difficult to continue more than maybe even 5 minutes sometimes. Why? Because of the incurrence of self. Because you have to do something again. And this doing takes the best of you, takes a lot of energy. But the moment that you realize, that process, that experience of meditation where you observe the breath itself is the phenomenon of that moment. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Yeah? Does that make sense? So at the moment when one is observing the breath, the air element, no other element should be coming into the mind. One should be able to, the one-pointedness, the sense of one-pointedness is where through all of these different elements that can potentially arise within that moment, the mind is focused upon one, what? The air element. The air element. As you mature in the meditation and you come to now realize a sense where you can now observe the breath without controlling it, the control aspect arose because of the self, because you had to do it, right? You had to observe. You had to be aware. That self is what keeps us from observing the organic, the natural, the involuntary breath. Yeah? Does that make sense, everyone? Does anyone have any questions? Right. Yes, Shriyani.
So that means you become one with the breath?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But when let's pick that apart. I think all of these sentences that we often use, I can be taken like the Eightfold Noble Path. It can be taken in a mundane way, and it can be taken in a super mundane way. I feel like when you say becoming one with the breath, right? It is important to realize that you're not becoming one with the breath.
Yeah.
By your, I'm referring to self, I, me, myself, and I, me. Yeah, it's not me who is becoming one with the breath. The consciousness is getting absorbed through one pointedness samadhi into that present moment experience. Yeah, into that present moment experience. If you, to make it even more clearer to everyone who is here, if you just think about the past and the future and how the past and the future arises during the course of meditation, there is always a strong sense of self, what you want to experience, your needs, your wants. All of that maneuvering, coming to balance is in a way, for example, when we lack balance, we might just shut our minds off and say, no one cares about what you want. But that's not the way. Right? It's not about shoving yourself aside, shoving the mind aside. It is about being absorbed into the present. And what is the present? When samadhi is existent, when samadhi is in motion, the present becomes whatever that is in that moment. The breath. Why? Not because there is no other process other than the breath, but because we've applied, we have put our minds through that process of one-pointedness upon the breath. Yeah? Does that make sense, everyone? Does that make sense? Any questions? All right. Yes, Lettuce.
Bhante, I remember you saying that when we do the Anapana, is the wind element, the motion you should be thinking about. But here it says it's the touch element at the nostril. So how do you differentiate the two?
The touch element. Remember, Lettuce, when we studied the Rupa, the 4 Mahabhutas in the Rupa section, we spoke about identifying the elements. The element of earth, the element, now we are talking about the element of air, so let's talk about that. Or maybe we can start with the element of water. The element of water is experienced through, for example, the hardness, its flowing nature, and the temperature of the water. That is how water is recognized. Here, we are simply referring to, even though it might be the hardness of the wind element, we are focusing on the wind, using the heart. For example, we might, using tongs, right? Using tongs to pick up something, pick up a piece of pastry or something. The main object of focus is not the tongs, it's a pastry. Again, one of my infamous cooking examples. Right? The tongs become an extension of yourself to pick it up. Right? But the tongs are in no way the object. We don't even think of the tongs. We think of, where should I pick up the pastry from? In a way that I won't be sort of breaking into the pastry, where I can pick it up without breaking it, right? Likewise, the air element is the main object of focus. How you understand it is not the object, but the tool and extension which supports the object or taking of the object. Is that understood?
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
But let us, in practice, we do sometimes also take, not that we should be, but we sometimes do fail and take the tongues as the object as well. That is when it goes wrong. Do you understand?
Yes,
Right?
thank you.
Okay, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Anyone else? All right. Now, moving on. Therefore, monks, a monk, exertive, fully aware, mindful, dwells contemplating the body in the body. The body in the body. Does that make sense? The body being the vayu dhatu, the air element. And now when the air element becomes something familiar, I won't use any other word, something familiar in experience as object, now the body in the body can be experienced with much ease. With much ease. Here, as a practitioner, you will come to realize a very unique aspect of difference, right? You will come to realize a very unique aspect of difference. In comparing this object, Anapana, the earth element, I'm sorry, the air element, and then when taking another object, you will realize for yourself the bliss which comes through the air element is not found in any other object that we would usually handle in our daily chores or daily life. It doesn't come. Why? This is why. Because whatever the practice in the beginning, middle, and the end is pure. When the practice is, what that means essentially by pure is that it is not tainted by the hindrances. When it is not tainted by the hindrances, we know Trihetuka Mahakusala Chitta Sobana Mahakusala Chitta rises. Great Sobana, beautiful. Is it beautiful, great, wholesome? No.
Great, beautiful, and wholesome.
Great, beautiful, wholesome consciousnesses arise. These consciousnesses have alobha, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion as supporting factors. That tranquility and peace brought in following a path which is beautifully the beginning, middle, and the end completes a karma patha. When it completes a karma patha, this karma is now able to, or is powerful enough to give rebirth. When a kusala is that powerful, what happens is it is distinctively experienced by the mind, especially because it is also different from all other experiences. Now, this is where, when the meditator continues his practice, the clinging towards abhijja and domanassa reduces, the clinging to ayonisamanskara reduces, and the stability of the moment with regards to alobha, adosa, amoha, or yonisamanskara increases. Because it is beautiful in the beginning, middle, and end, it should always be known that there is no impure desire towards these objects. Should one now cultivate a desire of an impure nature towards these objects, now the objects will disappear. The objects will simply disappear. Is that understood? Right? So with the increase in the maturing of the practice, the dependence that one has upon the Kamaloka reduces, and the independence of mind increases when independence of the mind increases when it is not bound down to or held down by those petty experiences that we once considered as the be-all and end-all of life. Yeah? Make sense? Right. Now, putting away covetous and displeasure for the world, which I have just explained, right? Vedananupassana, contemplation of feelings. Contemplation of feelings.
Bhante, before we go to the Vedananupassana, I like to ask a question about Sujato, Bhikkhu Sujato's explanation of this, the air element and manifestation of air element given in page 8.
Page
right?
8.
Page 8. What is the breath in meditation?
What is the breath?
In meditation.
All right. What is the breath?
Okay.
Right, we are here.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dhamma, yes.
Okay, yeah. According to the Sujato's explanation, the air element, when we contemplate on air element, we activate the Kaya Vijnana. And through Kaya Vijnana, we take this object of touch or potab. And now, once we take the potab, the feeling of that object, so what Sujato says, because we actually do it in breathing and breathe out in succession, and there's a vitaka involved, and that will not help to propagate Vedana deep into Sanya. So it jumps, it terminates, and does not give actual explanation to this Vedana, or whether it is good feeling or a bad feeling, because this Vitaka, which will stop further analyzing your Vedana and jumps back into the Pottabba or the touch thing. So that's the process actually. That's a process I explained to you some time ago. That's the process I can see every time when I feel touch of air in my nostrils. I get a sort of a feeling of an object, or the word I use what I use is not object actually. I said something different, and that. So we are contemplating on that. So you can see it says actually.
Would it help?
It is one Bhante. It's the what paragraph? From top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, last sentence. The subtle reflection of mind in the breath is now almost sole object in your awareness.
Yes.
Right? So practically what you get is a imprint of your breath, in breath and out breath in succession, or as it goes, and it acts as an rupa, object. What do you think about that one? And that's how you contemplate on your breath.
Yes.
Am I correct in that way, doing that way?
All right. Shall I read this, Damsari, for everyone?
Yeah.
Coming to this section after we finish the sutta, we'll read this one out. Yeah?
Yeah.
What is a breath in meditation? Writing from an experiential viewpoint of a practicing meditator of the forest tradition, Sujato gives us an instructive explanation of the nature of the breath. What exactly is the breath? There is a certain experience at the beginning of each breath, a different experience in the middle, and yet another at the end. These experiences are simply awareness of the air element, but it is perception that marks them off as the breath. Only the physical impact of the air on the nerve endings is registered by body consciousness. That body consciousness reports to the mind consciousness, which performs the more sophisticated cognitive tasks such as recognition, interpretation, and so on. The function of vitaka to initiate thoughts and vichara to sustain chains of thought is transformed by applying them not to perceptions of verbal construct, but to the perception of the breaths. Again, the function of vitaka to initiate thought and vichara to sustain chains of thoughts is transformed by applying them not to the perception of verbal constructs, but to the perception of the breath. Right? Yeah. I think Ashan Sujato's English is of another caliber to be able to put it into, words.
Yeah.
Right? Actively directing the mind away from the diversity of sense experience onto the breath.
Into the breath. That's the important one. That's exactly actually proliferation of the feeling.
Yes.
So practically it's stop proliferation of the feeling.
Actively directing the mind away from diversity of sense experience onto the breath. Ekaga.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doing so over and over, the common features of the breaths become apparent. By combining the shared features of the breaths, Recognized by perception and by ignoring irrelevant data, the mind forms a stable and coherent concept or mental image
of the breath.
nimitta.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
As contemplation deepens, the physical breath becomes very fine, so that its impact, originally overpowering, fades, and the settling mind gains more appreciation of the subtle mind consciousness. Originally overpowering, fades, and the settling mind gains more appreciation of the subtle mind consciousness. Right. This is where now originally overpowering fades, and originally overpowering fades, and the settling mind gains more appreciation of the subtle mind consciousness. This is a process that you go with the breath and with maturation. Right? Where you shift, where you now, you process a skill really, a skill where you are now able to relate to the breath more differently than when you first started off. Right? Now the breath or the meaning of the breath is completely different to you, and it has changed, matured, and now that new breath, and what the breath means to you, those definitions have now changed through those experiential wisdom, where now it is a very subtle mind object. Right? Subtle mind object. Here, the meditator is going beyond the first 4 steps of mindfulness. The meditator is going beyond the first 4 steps of mindfulness of breathing, which fall within body contemplation, kaya anupasana. Luminous rapture arises. The mind floats up like a balloon, relieved of its ballast. How do I pronounce that word?
Ballast.
Ballast. Of its ballast. What does ballast mean?
Ballast. Sometime in the ships, we put additional water to balance the ship.
Okay.
So that's why called ballast. Ballast is something you add to balance it.
To relieve of ballast. Okay. The mind floats up like a balloon, relieved of its ballast, as a heavy burden of the body disappearing. The subtle reflection of the mind in the breath is now almost the sole object in awareness.
Yeah.
The sole object in awareness. Okay. So here, I just how he just puts it into words,
Beautiful command of the language, Bhante. That's why when he says, you can understand.
Just very aspirational.
Yeah. Because it's their language it's their birth language, Bhante. When they explain, it just comes.
Wow. But not people with this birth language is able to do this. This is
Bhante, they're experienced meditators, and they're one of a kind for so many births they've done it. That's Bhante Sujato. I mean, he's the third one. That Brahmari in the middle, but all these things are translated by Sujata Bhante.
Yes. Now, the mind floats up like a balloon. Here, okay, let's read the rest of the paragraph. This refined concept, because of ignoring fluctuations in detail, this refined concept, because of ignoring fluctuations in detail, has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. In just the same way, then the concept of self has an enduring quality which outlives the body. It normally appears to the meditator as a brilliant light of awesome power, yet quite exquisite refinement as the fluctuations in consciousness even out, change fades away. Only one need no longer rely on it. Here, we take. Okay, let me go over it from the beginning, right? Here, this experience from, okay. When observing the breath initially, of course, through the struggles that we would go through, the breath goes through, or the understanding or the experience of the breath goes through change. We would always approach the breath or come to know of the air element through the physical base, right? Because without the physical base, if there is no sensation around the nostril area, how on earth are we actually going to feel the air element, right? How are we going to feel the air element? It is not going to happen. However, just as I mentioned earlier, although the object is held or known by the physicality of it, the physicality is not the object. The object is the air element, and what the air element represents and not what the physicality represents. So we do not go on to focusing on the hardness or the hard element. However, we will distinctively be able to tell of what the breath is through all of these tools that we will now begin to use. The description of how we relate to the breath or understand the breath hence will go through a motion of change. Now we started as the gross becomes finer, finer, and finer, and go through that process of refinement up until we are able to now, the breath, the grossness of the bodily functions become less of a note to your experience during meditation, and the object or the primary object becomes, or what you absorb into, becomes a subtle mind object of the breath. The subtle mind object of the breath. During this time, Upakleshas, of course, has its way of arising, but we are not going to talk about that. We are going to focus on Acharya Sujato's writing. Here, the way that Vitakka and Vichara initially arose, hence, also changes. Taking now the object or the mental image of the breath as the concept that we work with or continue with in Anapana Sati. Right? Work with in Anapana Sati. Because now, after adverting the mind through Vitakka and Vichara to observe the breath without essentially clinging on to the physicality, not hoping that it was any different, letting go essentially, when the hindrances are suppressed, the mind takes an object far more effectively. The mind takes the object far more effectively. Now the mental image of the breath becoming almost like a nimitta, where now without the physicality, you know the mental image, or you know the mental image of the breath. Once you continue with this, even that mental image will continue to grow subtler and subtler and subtler. At this point, there will be a deep sense of profound relaxation Relaxation which comes in a way where you are unburdened of the need, the want to cling, to hold on, to do, but you find in a way home with the mental image of the breath. Right? And when you realize, when you grow comfortable with this image, the moment that you sit down a minute, you're in that state. Right? Maybe not even a minute. You sit down, you close your eyes, you go into Anapana, you're there. Because you know the way home, of course. You're there. When you are there, this sense of the unburdening that happens, right? You're not doing anything, by the way. The more you're at, the more that you relate and understand this sense of peace and tranquility which arises. It's wrong of me. It's incorrect of me to define it as, when I say peace and tranquility, it might give out the idea that we are after the sensation. It is really not. Right? So it is wrong of me to use those words then. Right? It is not that we are clinging to the peace. It is not that we are clinging to the tranquility or the relaxation. That becomes of us. However, what we find ourselves going into is truly a state of peace, not as a Vedana, but as an experience. Not as a Vedana, but true, but as a state of being. How else am I supposed to put it? As a state of being.
As a state of awareness, Bhante.
No, not as a state of awareness. As a state of being. The awareness is there. It is present. Why it is a state of being? It's like a magnetic pull. The more that you're within that kusala mind, the more that you find yourself, just think of this. That example which said, in the kusala chittas, where some three hetuka kusala chittas are alobha, adosa and amoha. And then when we went on to those kusala chittas which don't have amoha but just alobha and adosa, right? Then it explained in the Abhidhamma book, and it said, just because amoha is not present does not mean the incurrence of abhijja. Right? It does not mean that there is abhijja or delusion. Right? It means that you simply don't have that part. In the same way, the mind learns the skill of not doing and just being with that subtle breath. Earlier, we wanted a lot of things to be, isn't it? Even in meditation, we wanted to experience something. What's next? What's next? What can I experience next? What is this? What is that? Even during our meditation, the mind was all over with the vitakkas. Now, it is not so. You don't need any of that. Right? By what I mean by need any of that, not that the vitakka is arising and then I'm not talking about that gross vitakka. I'm talking about a being who finds peace. Simply owing to the fact that the mind no longer needs those elements that the mind once wanted. The mind likes to be busy. Now the busyness, the need for that does not arise. The busyness, even the inclination of the word busyness is not present. That just draws you in further into the ekagata. draws you in further into the ekagata in a way that you're not even going into the ekagata. You're just like a feather, slowly, calmly, sort of gliding through the air and then settling on a pool of water or whatever it is. It doesn't need to glide, but it simply just relaxes more and more and more. Do you get it? Right? When that happens, now, as you go into that state of awareness, now, just a point of information to a person who practices often, right? This is not years of meditation. This is weeks, right? This is weeks, maybe months, right? If you're really struggling through something, but it's actually truly simply weeks. You will experience this, right? And when this happens, when you find that sense of peace without attachment, remember there's no attachment, right? You're not saying, oh, I want to go deep into this. No, none of that. The body becomes to feel lighter and lighter and lighter, experiencing a deep, here it puts it beautifully, right? A balloon, which is, whatever tying it down is let gone of, right? And then the balloon just rises in the same way, whatever, not that remember, we are not doing this. We are not doing this with vitakka. It happens. It happens with the experience. That is what being in the present brings. Does that make sense? It happens. Don't think that you're the one who's removed the balloon. All of these things we're doing, right? All of these things we're doing at this position disappears. You don't need to do anything. Just be. Just be. And check up on yourself every end of the meditation. And it is actually then that end of the meditation then tells you, okay, what are the places? What you learn from that experience, right? Because you're not doing anything in your meditation at this state. You're being, not doing, right? Then, like it says here, the body feels lighter and lighter and lighter. And actually, even if you bring your mind, even if the mind comes to realize, and you do realize, oh, am I actually floating? Sometimes that can happen, right? Where you realize, oh, where am I? Or am I actually floating? You will actually see, if you're not surprised or if you're not shocking yourself into sort of, the sense pleasures, or not the sense pleasures, I'm sorry, the senses again, you will actually be able to feel that sense of lightness, almost as if your feet are not touching the ground. You will feel lighter and lighter and lighter, right? Lighter and lighter. This refined concept, because of ignoring fluctuations in detail, has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. In just the same way that the concept of self has an enduring quality which outlives the body, it normally appears to the meditator as a brilliant light of awesome power, yet exquisite refinement. As the fluctuations in consciousness even out, change fades away. Right? What this essentially means, how do we relate to the word fluctuations? Earlier, the fluctuations were far more common and aggressive, and the reactions of the mind to these fluctuations of experience were distinct and different from one another. right? For example, a state of awareness arose, a state of samadhi arose, and the moment it arises, you're like, oh, what's this? That's a fluctuation, right? These fluctuations of experience now, with this position, slowly calms. The mind becomes aware and does not let vitaka and vichara take the best of it anymore. Remember, again, you're not doing this, it happens. Right? When vitaka and vichara, when those two sisters are in the game, they want to know, they want to evaluate everything. Now, with the mind being at this position, these fluctuations, just as something you see, you are aware of it, but you are not reactive towards it. In the same way, that position of reactivity changes, and you don't react as like we once did. One need no longer rely memories of past experience to interpret the present moment. The contrast on which time depends is not evident. The past and the future disappear in the seamless flow of the present. One-pointedness in time. The contents of experience become so, how do I pronounce this, please?
Rarefied.
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 The contents of experience become so rarefied that signs and summaries are rendered superfluous. A deeper mode of knowing emerges. Beautiful. Beautiful, oh my gosh.
Bhante, can I just ask you something, please, Bhante?
One moment, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Here, what we then essentially experience is a state of pristine presence. A state of pristine presence. A presence which is not defined in quality. Is not defined in quality. Now earlier, before we got into this position, we defined or we tried to define the quality of presence. Now it does not happen. We become so still in the present that time and everything else simply becomes non-distinct. It all disappears. Where you will go into meditation and you will be in meditation and forget about all these bodily pains and all of these things. These things don't arise anymore. Right? These things don't arise anymore. Right? And let me tell you, if one person, reading this itself, I believe is so sort of inspiring, right? And beautiful, and gives you a sense of, oh, I wish I could get there, right? But let me tell you, a couple weeks of dedicated practice, this comes. A couple weeks of dedicated practice, and this experience is so beautiful. It is really so, so beautiful, far beyond anything else that you've ever experienced. No delicious, expensive food or vacation or nothing could ever compare to this experience. It is almost as this is the first true, pure experience of wholesome and the potential of wholesome that you truly experience. It just engulfs you in such an organic and beautiful way that the world actually no more matters fit to you. Ukraine can be invaded, I don't care. kind of thing. It's like the dependence that we have at this moment, it completely changes you. Now, if you will experience, because of this strong sense of beauty and peace that you experience in that moment, you will become far more inclined towards Nibbana than you ever were. And something that arose in my mind to keep me going on at this position was, wow, if this feels like this, how would Nibbana feel like? How would Nibbana feel like? Yes. So yes, dear.
Bande, I just want to ask you about an experience. You don't have to do months and months, Bande, but personally for me, what I realized is, see, before we go on a retreat, see, doing half an hour, 1 hour is not the thing, Bante. If you do 1 hour regularly, yes, but when you do a retreat and when you do, say, 10 days or at least 10 days, because 7 I find is a bit more. The point is, Bante, unlike a monk, when you're lay, particularly when those who are working will know this. I think Samantha will be able to relate to this. So because you have to go away for 7 days and you're so much of things you are responsible for. You're running here. And when you go there, your mind is like, you've done what you would have done in, normally you have to do all this. So Bante, what I realized is that's why even doing, and I was telling Ajahn Brahm about this, that now he can come away only for 8 days. But when you do, and an 8 day, because he can't leave Australia because he's in so many committees and things. So what happens is it takes about 5 days of this very busy, I suppose if you're retired and you're having a very sort of comfortable life and don't have responsibility, it'll be much quicker. But when you have been running and having 150 things, children who are here and something is there and something is happening in your house and so many things, it takes about, from my experience, about 5 days of doing long meditations, getting up at about 4, 5, and then going continuously. We end up about 9 o'clock with the teachings also. It takes about 4 or 5 days. 5 days, I would say, 5 to 6 for me. Maybe I'm scatty, I don't know. It takes that amount of time to be able for your mind to get into this calm sort of state that around the 7th of 8 days, that in my case, it's very kinesthetic, but whatever it is, whatever you see, the light or the feeling, for you to get, and then the retreat is over. And then you say, oh my God. But if you're like Bante, you're a monk and you're there and every day you're doing that, yes, you don't need months and months. But when you're lay and if you are very busy, if you're having busy life, so it's just like your hindrances don't go down because you're all the time, having kamachanda or somewhat irritating vyapada or, all these things. Even if you don't have the other things, lot and topper, those things are those 2 first hindrances are very much a part of your life. So it's difficult, Bante, to go into this state. But if you have that gap, and that's what I told him, really it must be. So that's why he says come to Jhana Grove. Yes, if you can go to Australian Jhana Grove, you can say people wait 2 weeks or 1 month or something. That's different because you're in that setting. But when you're a lay person in the lay life, and I'm just telling you my experience, maybe other people have brought much more parami, but it's more difficult, Bante, because your mind is running, and we haven't, the hindrances aren't still enough to come into the state quickly, Bante. But by the 5th or 6th, and that's what I'm telling Ajahn Brahma, he said, the thing is, I can't come to England for more than 8 days. And he agreed. And he said, yes, I can understand what you're saying, because you have just come to that thing and you say, oh, you wanted to go out, and the retreat is finished, you're packing a bag, you're come. And then you come back, and then I don't know, I never meditated for more than an hour. It's very easy, but not because I can't sit. I can sit for much longer, but and I don't get pain. But the difference is, Bante, there are so many household duties that you can't just sit for 2-3 hours like in a retreat when you don't have to cook, you don't have to clean it, you don't even have to wash your clothes because you don't need to wash and get there, because you take, if you're 10-day retreat, you take 10 days of clothes and go. I mean, that's what I do. You leave half in the car because you don't have enough and you just stay. So that's very different, Bante. So while this is really marvelous, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and I'm not saying you need years and years either, But what you must realize is if you are a busy person doing busy duties, those two first hindrances don't let you get quickly into this state. But if you're on a retreat, yes, and you're led, and it's a whole day retreat, not just one night at home and other people. In a retreat, residential, with a good teacher who has experienced the jhanas and who knows, I don't know, whatever language you, if you're very familiar with Sinhalese, then it must be with someone who can. Now, for me, it has to be somebody in English because all these words are just words that I normally use. So that when you're saying it, like how you said, how beautifully it is said, right? Because there, and then, yes, but it takes about the 5th, 6th days. You know, you are now sensing that. And definitely by about the 7th day, you're in this state. And I feel it more as a feeling rather than the light, but it's just this, and this feeling of not being anywhere, this, you're in a bubble. And that ballast is really like a water, which is not anything that floats. It's water that is in a tank and it in a boat or anything, as Dhamma said, it balances. But here that ballast is removed so that the balloon just floats away. That balancing thing that you get in a boat or anything that is floating and the water moves from side to side, that's thrown away and you're just let loose. So, but I feel it more as a feeling than a light. But it's difficult if you don't have time for retreats, and if you don't. And the thing is, you may experience, and during that time, yes, but then you come back to the busyness of lay life again, and you don't do a long spell again because you don't have the time and whatever, or the money, because these retreats are very expensive. So if you can't find that retreat and if you can't go, because then what happens is, again, you don't really get into this state again because it's there during that time. And if you have time, so that's why I find that, when you're lay people, if you lead busy lives and you're interested in so many other things that karma chanda has to come, you're attracted to this or attracted to that or this thing that you're skilled at or whatever is responsibility. Hari Amari, it doesn't happen like that, Bhante. And that's why what you said, you don't have to abandon the hindrances, but you have trained your mind to be aware of them and you're not dependent on them. And that's such a crucial thing. You're not dependent on those. So when you see something that you really like, you're able to say yes, and you do a little bit, but you can give it away. So that's just my personal experience, Bhante. The way I, as a lay person, and what you say, Bhante, you have never experienced that kind of I don't know, I call it rapture, joy. It's beyond anything you have ever experienced, like whether it's physicality or beauty in a sunset or chocolate cake or what you like. It's beyond that. But difficult to get there, not because you can't, because our minds are too much full of hindrances in a lay life.
Yes.
Sad.
Dil. Yeah, thank you, Dil. Thank you. Well, the only way I could react to that is to say it sounds like you problem. I understand. And I think, yes, our lives are so busy, there's so much going on. But I think also in dependence of the lifestyle that we have chosen for ourselves, if we are able to sort of come near to these experiences in whichever way, we find that because the Buddha's Dhamma, the Akalika Dhamma, has not only been practiced by monks, we find that it is practiced by different people, of different occupations and all of that. And something that I've seen over the years is sometimes lay people, or even sort of monks really, who might not be living in monasteries and all of that, they surprise you. They surprise you. And when we think that something is not possible, they truly do surprise us, right? Especially, I remember our friend Mihiri telling me once that there was a lady who, she was just a woman living at home and doing her thing in London. And when she was hospitalized for COVID, and she had written out this sort of explanation, and just documented her sort of Dhammic journey through her time and experience with COVID and being in a hospital and being put through all of those sort of experiences that none of us would ever look forward to or even wish upon any of our loved ones or anyone really. You know, the way that she was able to maintain her mind through that very difficult time. And I think it is always good to sort of have an attitude where we pursue the path, regardless of which environment that we are in. Regardless of which environment that we are in. So that we are able to, and for example, some of the people even here who join for the meditations some of you have experienced deep states of samadhi, even if they are just time to time or occasionally. We find that we can experience these states, and these states of samadhi, right? These states of samadhi, even whilst living the lives that we do, right? So I do not in any way want to brush off the idea that that this is not possible, but it is. It might be challenging, of course, but I think it is very important that we work towards it, right? So, yeah.
Bhante, I fully agree, Bhante, and that's what to do. And I'm not at all saying what was. I'm only saying that that's why it's important to be committed. It's important to have a daily practice, and it's important to sit for about 10 hours. If you can do that, yes, that's what I was trying to. Not that you can't do, you can, and you can do, but that is so important, Bhante.
Yeah,
that we have a committed practice. Definitely as lay people. I mean, we are all lay people, right? And why are we doing it? Because we know it's possible. And I know in this retreat, many people have experienced this, but when you come back, if you are committed to that daily practice and you don't put it aside as something and you do it, yes, it is practice and yes, it's wonderful. But that commitment we need to have, Bhante, to sit every day, not only on the day that you take us, which is quite often what we do, Bhante.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not at all saying that it's not possible. It is very possible, and it is so wonderful that it's something. In fact, it's so encouraging that is what we should do, and the other things should pale away so that we don't get caught up with those first two hindrances. That's all. Thank you.
All right. So we are at the end of our session for today. We'll continue with the rest of the sutra next time. So does anyone have any other questions or anything that they would like to ask or share? Damsiri, yes.
Hey, when you're talking about nimitta, signs, we know that sign is important in samatha bhavana, samatha meditation, right? And when it comes to vidarshana, samatha is considered as upaklesha. The nimitta is considered as a upaklesha. Is that so?
Yes, it is. I think we went through this as well, isn't it? With regards to the upakleshas, we find that nimittas become upakleshas because when nimittas arise, that they could easily take us away from the vipassana. That is why the nimittas are referred to as upakleshas. However, when a nimitta would most possibly arise during meditation, right? A nimitta would most possibly arise during the meditation. Although it does arise, we do not really do much with it, right? We do not do much with it. Actually, anything with it, we simply don't react. And even Damsiri, even for example, with the lightness comes with priti. That is also upaklesha.
Oh, I see.
Right? And that lightness, when that lightness at that moment arises, it has to, I remember the first time that I experienced it, and I was actually in tears. My eyes were closed, but I was tearing, right? And right, because it was such a beautifully blissful and tranquil experience for me, right? For me personally, the first time, right? And yes, so the nimitta, we don't really do anything with it, but however, the nimitta will arise.
Bhante, also the inner chatter can be happen same time with the nimitta. Same.
Inner chatter. It depends on the position that you are in, right? In the initial stages, yes, the inner chatter can happen, but later on, the inner chatter sort of also disappears. Because when you see it, now usually at the first time when you see the nimitta, a vipassana nimitta, a nimitta rising because of your Anapana Sati practice, yes, at once you might sort of feel, there's a nimitta, or what is this, or something like that. But as it goes on, it will sort of, that inner chatter also sort of will go off.
Yeah, understand. Yeah.
Chatter will go off, and the nimitta will also move off, because you're not giving attention.
Thank you, Bhante.
Right? Anyone else?
Wanted this word parimukha, which came before, where they said literally means around the entrance. So when you start, that awareness around the entrance, that's called parimukha, is it? When you first start, you feel the
Parimukham, as I remember when the word was used, it means entrance.
Yes, that awareness near the nose and the lips, and that entrance where the breath enters. Is that what it means?
Yes, you will have to check where the word parimukha arises, because parimukha can also be used as the entrance to the practice.
Yeah. And that's why they say where you go and not a parak bandagana cross-legged and sit and bring your focus, that is also considered as a parimukha. That's like you're making that comes further down in that page that you're reading, page 8, where at the bottom it says parimukha literally means around the entrance, and here always in front of. So it may be just at the entrance, or as you start meditating, sitting cross-legged.
We also went through a part of the sutra where it literally meant entrance into the practice, or entrance into the Dhamma. So start the Anapana Sati practice also. Yes, parimukha can mean the entrance of or to something, or it can mean the entrance of a certain orifice. Yeah?
That beginning, like where there's a gihilla in solitude and rukumul gata, and you sit around and cross level, that is also considered to be the entrance to the practice. And this is the other entrance around the northern. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
All right then, everyone. So lovely session. Thank you all for joining. And I will be uploading session as always. Take care. I will see you tomorrow morning for meditation. For those of you who will be joining at 7 a.m. UK time. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.